there, welcome back to my channel. I hope that your day is starting off as right as it possibly can. For this guy here, well, I guess we're going to check into it with these stories for today. Now, as we all know, right now, as of June 13th, 2025, we already know that one of the cases of the century, trials of the century is going on right now as we speak with the Diddy trial. But as we also know, his trial is not the only one that's been in the recent headlines, and now subsequently a retrial and a mistrial also. So we've got some retrial updates to share in regards to the one and only Harvey Weinstein. I think maybe one of the major cracks that broke up the situation in the first place, that maybe even potentially somewhat got us where we are right now. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and go over those latest. Now, this is going to be a two-part within the video. So I've got two sharings. One is going to talk about the retrial that took place because of whatever circumstances that got us to the point that whatever the trial that was previously had and got him convicted and incarcerated, somehow things, you know, how things go sometimes, put us in a position right now to where we are now in the viewing of a retrial for him. So not only did the retrial take place, there was also a mistrial as well associated. So that's lies the part two portion. So we're going to get into it. So I think Harvey Weinstein is not really necessary to have an introduction to him. We do know that he was convicted on S crimes, and yeah, it was one of the leading charges of the opposite side of the Me Too movement. So there we go. Instead of going through any more of that information, which I think we're going to touch on quite a bit of it probably in these two shares, we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. All right. So our first sharing is coming to us by way of CNN. All right. Let's see what CNN is talking about. So apparently it's sharing that jury convicts Harvey Weinstein of top charge in the retrial of his landmark Me Too S crimes case. Again, we want to make sure we keep it YouTube friendly, so I will be changing some words around. Now, former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein was convicted Wednesday of one of the top charges in his S crimes retrial, but acquitted of another, and jurors were as yet unable to reach a verdict on a third charge. Now, the split verdict meted out a measure of vindication to his accusers and prosecutors, but also to Weinstein after the landmark case was thrown into limbo. Now, the partial verdict came after an extraordinary day in which the jury foreperson indicated he felt bullied, and Weinstein himself urged the judge to halt the trial, declaring, "It's just not fair." Now, my life is on the line, and you know what? It's not fair, the former Hollywood heavy hitter declared after making an unusual request to address the court. It's time to say this trial is over. So Weinstein's initial conviction 5 years ago seemed to cement the downfall of one of Hollywood's most powerful men in a pivotal moment for the Me Too movement. But that conviction was overturned last year, and the case was sent back for retrial in the same Manhattan courthouse. This time, a majority female jury convicted the former studio boss of forcibly subjecting Miriam Haley, a producer and production assistant, to a criminal S act in 2006. But jurors acquitted Weinstein of another criminal S act charge. It related to Kaja Sokola, a former model whose allegations of forcible oral S date to 2006, but were added to the case late last year, period. And jurors were to continue deliberating on Thursday on a charge that he R-ed another woman, hairstylist and actor Jessica Mann, in 2013. Now, under New York law, the third degree R charge carries a lesser penalty than the first degree criminal S Act offense. Now, Weinstein, 73, denies sexually assaulting or R-ing anyone. Now, jury deliberations had teetered Wednesday. The foreperson who complained Monday that other jurors were pushing people to change their minds and talking about information beyond the charges signaled to Judge Curtis Farber that he wanted to talk. He said, words to the effect of, "I can't go back in there with the other jurors," Farber explains later. The discussion was close to the press and public, but Farber later said the foreperson had expressed that he didn't want to change his position and was being pressured, with another juror saying something like, "I'll meet you outside one day," and yelling and screaming in the room. Now, Weinstein lawyer Arthur Adelia urged the judge to declare a mistrial, saying that the poor person had expressed concerns for his safety. Now, prosecutor Matthew Colangilio, however, said that the poor person hadn't seemed afraid or apprehensive, just stubborn. Now, the episode was the latest sign of strain among jurors, and on Friday, one of them had asked to be excused because he felt another member of the group was being treated unfairly. Now, Weinstein's lawyers asked unsuccessfully for mistrial then and again after the poor person expressed his concerns past Monday. Now, Weinstein and the Me Too. Well, the trial once again turned a legal lens and, to some extent, the public eye on the man whose reputed history of brutishness toward women propelled into the Me Too era that began in 2017. Weinstein's companies produced or distributed a string of Best Picture Oscar winners from 1997's The English Patient to 2012's The Artist, plus scores of other films with Academy Award-winning performances, screenplays, music, or costume design. He personally stood on the Oscar stage as a producer of 1999 Best Picture winner Shakespeare in Love. He also became a prominent Democratic donor. Now, then an Italian model had told police in 2015 that Weinstein had abruptly groped her in his New York office. No charges ever resulted from her allegations, and a decision that haunted the Manhattan District Attorney's Office 2 years later, when the New York Times and the New Yorker detailed decades of sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations against Weinstein. Now, those disclosures made the Me Too a global rallying cry for sexual misconduct, awareness, and accountability. Now, Weinstein ultimately was charged, convicted, and sentenced to prison in New York and California. Now, his California conviction stands, though he is appealing it. But New York's highest court awarded Weinstein a new trial, faulting the former trial judge for letting prosecutors buttress their case with testimony from Weinstein's accusers beyond those whose accusations had led to charges. Now, the retrial wasn't a simple repeat. Those additional accusers didn't testify at the spring's retrial, but it was expanded with new charges related to Sokola, a Polish psychotherapist who said Weinstein had forced oral S on her when she was a 19-year-old model. And there were fresh bursts of tension in a case long full of graphic details and deeply personal testimony. As shaken Sokola was confronted with a passage from her private journal. Mann pointed indignantly at Weinstein as she walked past him in court. Haley cursed at him from the witness stand. The accusations in Weinstein's defense, well, Weinstein's accusers, who all worked in show business or wanted to, said he exploited his Tinseltown influence to dangle career help, get them alone, and then trap and force them into sexual encounters. In a complexity that spent days explaining, the women stayed in contact with Weinstein, saw him again, and at times accepted or requested invitations or favors according to testimony and documents. Now, Mann said she had a consensual relationship with Weinstein that began before and continued after he allegedly ordered her. The accusers said they were trying to reckon with that and what had happened, attempting to suppress the assaults for their career's sake, or trying to keep the peace with an influential, well-connected, and irreversible man. Weinstein chose not to testify, which is probably a good idea. His attorneys portrayed his accusers as Hollywood wannabes and hanger-ons who willingly hooked up with him to court opportunity. Then recast the encounters as crimes years later to collect settlement funds and Me Too appropriation. The Associated Press generally does not name people who say they have been sexually assaulted unless they agreed to be identified. Haley, Mann, and Sokol did so. Yes, because you've got to make sure you cover your back, right? Well, so this is interesting, right? And some of you probably were fully aware of it because it was kind of the news that, really shook up the situation, because we kind of thought that this case was, tried, convicted, done for, right? A lot like Cosby situation. But of course, that one also was ripe for a different situation, and then a different outcome took place there. So I'm curious to know your thoughts. Were you surprised that this was going to lead its positioning to a retrial? I mean, of course, one of the things that you would want to see from an individual is trying to fight for their life, because that's exactly what they're doing at this point. Either they're going to have a very lengthy stay in camp, or they're going to be there for life in prison. And that's kind of just how that rolls. And the older you are, the closer that time frame can come to being a life sentence, no matter maybe what numbers that might turn out to be. But the whole thing is having the appropriate accountability for the appropriate situation. So I guess we'll have to see how that would, continue on. Now, whether they will try to appeal this decision or this retrial decision, I guess we'll see what will happen there. I'm definitely going to be keeping, my eye on it and letting you know of any updates that come across in regards to that. But understanding that there was 3 charges, 3 accusational, convictions, and all 3 were being challenged. Well, 2 obviously went through, but 1, well, it led them right into a mistrial. So now we're going to go ahead and get into that sharing and find out what exactly led this retrial into a split verdict that made one of their cases turn into a mistrial opportunity, which then again, I would assume they're probably going to, go through the rigmarole to retry that one again. So let's go ahead and get into that. So that sharing is actually coming to us by way of abcnews.go. It shares, judge declares mistrial on R count in Harvey Weinstein's S crimes retrial after jury chaos. Now, the jury foreman had refused to return to deliberate. A New York judge has declared a mistrial on the 3rd-degree R count in Harvey Weinstein's S crimes retrial on Thursday after the jury foreman refused to return to deliberate. The foreman had told Judge Curtis Farber on Wednesday that he was afraid to be in the same room with fellow jurors after he had claimed that he had yelled at him to try and change his mind. Asked if he would be willing to go back to the deliberation room Thursday, the foreman said, "No, I'm sorry." Farber then dismissed the remaining jurors. Now, the former movie mogul was accused of sexually assaulting 3 women over a decade ago to New York City. The mistrial comes a day after the jury convicted Weinstein on 1 count of criminal S act involving Mimi Haley and acquitted him of another crime or another count of criminal S act involving Kaja Sokola. So actually, looks appeared 1 out of the 3 so far, right? Well, that's interesting upset. Now, the 3rd count related to an alleged assault on aspiring actress Jessica Mann in 2013. Now, all 3 women have publicly come forward and testified during the trial, and Farber said he spoke to the remaining jurors who told him they were disappointed they did not get to render a verdict on, well, the 3rd count. "I will say they were extremely disappointed that deliberations ended before they reached a verdict," Farber said. Now, the judge also said that the remaining jurors did not describe anything like the discord and threats recounted by the foreman. So things that make you go, They all thought that they were involved in a normal discourse. Or normal discourse rather, and they don't understand why the 4-person bowed out, Farber said. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, whose office prosecuted the case, said they immediately informed the court Thursday that they are ready to try Weinstein again on the R count after conferring with Mann. Of course they are. Now, Harvey Weinstein is going to be held accountable for his conduct as to Ms. Haley, and he's facing a very significant term of imprisonment for that, Bragg said during a press briefing Thursday. But the jury was not able to reach a conclusion as to Ms. Mann, and she deserves that. And most certainly, closure is deserved to be had, period, right? Bragg thanked the 3 women for their immense sacrifices, saying they spent days on the witness stand sharing the most traumatic moments of their lives in a room full of strangers, and their credibility and character were attacked during lengthy cross-examinations. They were accused of being money hungry, and they were called liars. They were even told that they, in fact, were the abusers, he said. But they stood their ground, and for that, I'm extraordinarily grateful. Now, an attorney for Weinstein, Arthur Idelia, said they plan to appeal the conviction in the retrial, which that makes sense as well. "We have very powerful evidence that there was gross juror misconduct at this trial," Adelia told reporters outside the courthouse. "None of us have ever heard of that, where a jury is so intimidated." A grown man who was in good physical shape in his late 30s saying, "I'm afraid to go back into the deliberating room. If that doesn't cast doubt on the verdicts here, I don't know what would. This is not over," he said. Now, Adelia further alleged jury misconduct, saying they found out that jurors were considering evidence not admitted at trial. Now, the 4-person told the judge on Monday that jurors were discussing Harvey Weinstein's past, according to a transcript of the closed encounter in the judge's chambers. When the judge summoned the entire jury that day, he reminded them to discuss only the evidence presented at a trial and to be cordial. Asked if he would be looking into the alleged jury malfeasance, Bragg said vigorous and robust exchange of ideas within the jury in the jury room is a hallmark and an important hallmark of our system. And so from what we've seen within the record, the jury notes that our observation, this is consistent with the administration of justice. Now, Weinstein was being retried for sexually assaulting Haley and Mann after his early conviction was overturned on appeal. He was also charged with sexually assaulting Sokola, who was not part of the first trial. Now, prosecutors said Weinstein preyed on the three women as he held unfettered power for over 30 years in Hollywood, while the defense countered the producer did not coerce the women and claimed that they were using him for his connections. Now, Weinstein, 73, pleaded not guilty, of course, and as said, his sexual encounters were consensual. He did not testify during the trial. Now, the split verdict and mistrial on the third count came after some discord in the jury room during deliberations. Early Wednesday, the jury foreperson had sent a note telling Ferber he cannot go back inside with those people. That followed a closed-door conversation during which the foreperson complained to the judge the jurors were attacking one another and fighting, adding, "I don't like it," according to a transcript. Without the jury present, Weinstein addressed the judge on Wednesday and complained the jury behavior is depriving him of a fair trial. "We've heard threats, we've heard fights, we've heard intimidation." Weinstein said, "This is not right for me, the person on trial here." Farber had proposed cooling off period. Then the jury came back and saying they had a verdict on the two criminal act counts. They were dismissed and set to resume deliberations on the R count on Thursday, with Farber reminding the jurors to be respectful to one another, as if you have to say that to grown people. Now, following the mistrial on count, Mann confirmed in a statement her willingness to testify for what would be a third time. "I will never give up on myself and making sure my voice and the truth is heard," she said. "I have told the district attorney I am ready, willing, and able to endure this as many times as it takes for justice and accountability to be served. Today is not the end of my fight." Now, Mann previously said in a statement that she would never lie about R or use something so traumatic to hurt someone. New York's highest court overturned Weinstein's initial 2020 conviction on appeal last year, finding the trial judge erroneously admitted testimony of uncharged alleged prior sexual acts against persons other than the complainants of the underlying crimes. I do remember that. Now, Weinstein has also appealed his 2022 conviction on S offenses in Los Angeles. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison there. Now, Delia said Thursday that they were very confident that the appeal would be successful. Of course, this story is developing, so we're going to definitely be checking back for updates later, or as they, get brought to us. So there you have it. It looks like a lot is going on in the world of Weinstein, and how this all, stacks up or not, to me is going to be, a lot more work, obviously. Do I think that this is going to result in him being, no longer incarcerated? I don't think so. I kind of think that this is where he is. This is just what is going to be, par for the course. That is my thoughts on that as of right now, especially needing to know when the sentencing, or if there's going to be a resentencing, or how that's going to affect with that split verdict. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Because if I remember correctly, I believe he got like a 22 year sentence in New York. And then I didn't even know that they had did their thing over there in California. I thought that was already waiting, but I guess that part has been done. And so they got the 16 years, which they shared in the sharing here. And then it looked like, so if you add the 16 plus the 20, here we go, right? We're talking 36, 37 years, something to that effect. And Weinstein's 73 years old. So it's a life sentence, right? at this point. We'll just have to see how this all works out. But again, in my thoughts at this point, am I seeing anything that makes it feel like he's going to leave? No. But do I see more appealing action going on the first retrial situation? Yeah, because they have a number of appeals that he can go through, and I don't know the number. 5 for some reason comes to mind, but that may not be the case here, so I don't know for sure. But I'm sure whatever number of appeals options he has in New York, he still has the same option, or maybe depending on whatever the law is there, have that position in California as well. So that being said, even if he is convicted fully on one and not on the other, it's still a long time, right? So, but the important thing is for justice to be served. The important thing is for accountability to be had and to be made, and to be placed upon the person who who is being charged, if convicted, to have that, handled in that manner. So I guess we will see. Definitely, there are going to be some updates. We're definitely going to see how this mistrial situation is going to take hold. I had no doubt that they were going to try to appeal the retrial of the first case for Mann, and that doesn't surprise me at all. But I do, obviously see that prosecution is going to go ahead and do what they need to do to, see about, probably securing a conviction for that mistrial case. So yeah, it seems like a lot of hoopla, a lot of to do about I don't know what. And yeah, temperatures are rising, aren't they, in people as well as around the world, and that should mean something to a lot of people. But I guess time will tell, and we'll see. And as we are looking at this situation, we're also looking to see what happens with the Abercrombie and Fitch guy as well. That seems to have gotten quiet. I did an actual video on that, and so he's also a very senior individual, and I guess we're waiting for justice on that. Will we see it? I don't know, but I'll keep my eyes on that as well. And then, of course, the current trial of the century right now, which is that of Diddy. And at this point, trial of the century is really applies to a multitude of people. I mean, it used to be a time where it's like one case, right? One situation. It doesn't seem to be that way. Now there seems to be multiple trials of the century going on at this point. But I guess we will see what may. And even to that point, as far as I've been doing a recap and review of the weekly, what's been going on with the Diddy trial. I have got up to week 3. I do need to give y'all a week 4. Kind of give you highlights of what took place for for reference. If you didn't get a chance to keep up, I do know that there's others that are also providing maybe some daily correspondence as well. So it's just an opportunity to have a conversation about what's going on, because it is something that is going on in the world. And also too, I will be working towards week 5, because that's the current week that we're in right now. So I'll be doing some kind of a maybe a bit of a combination. It'll be split off, but you'll get both probably within the same time frame of upload, so that way we can be caught up and ready for week 6 next week. So that's just a little bit of a tidbit there. But with that, I think that'll about do it for this particular video. I definitely will be keeping you abreast of what goes on with this as time goes on, and any updates that are provided, I'll definitely be sharing with you. So thank you so much for taking the time to take a watch and a listen. Definitely, though, if you do not have that all notification bell on, make sure that you do, because I will be coming back with 2 more videos for today as well. And yeah, I'm going to want to know your thoughts on those, as well as, I like to share mine. So with that, I thank you so much. Make sure that you do have those bells on, because like I said, I will be back. And if you are new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so appreciative of you being here for the view and the watch. Definitely make sure that you hit the subscribe button, be part of the family. I would so love to have you. And for all of you that are already part of the family, you know what it is. You know what it is. I appreciate you so very much for your continued viewing and listening support. And so with that, I'm going to pop off right now, and I will see you in a few hours. You take care, and I'll see you back then. Bye.